Warning signs. They aren't there by accident. If we miss them, the ride is likely to get pretty bumpy. Proceeding with the right amount of caution. That's what's up ahead on this episode of the Educators Among Us podcast.
Welcome to the Educators Among Us podcast, where we share motivational messages and inspiring stories for and about educators. Your host, Scott Barron, is author of the critically acclaimed book, Love 'Em and Lead 'Em, and provides powerful insights and wisdom for those who heed the call to teach, coach, lead, and serve at all levels of education.
This is Scott Barron, and I'm so honored to be your host for the Educators Among Us podcast, a very special program for those who serve in all forms and genres and types of education. If you get to pour into the lives of other people, we are very thankful for you, and we're here for you. We like to pray for educators, encourage educators, and just be a part of their journey as we get to speak at different conferences and work with schools on some of the things that they're doing to provide the best environment for educators to thrive and just be a part of that journey, because it's hard being an educator and being a part of the lives of other people and helping them grow and discover new things and wisdom and truth. And, you know, it's a journey of personal growth as well as seeing others grow. And we're thankful that you invest that time and that energy and using your incredible talents to be a part of the lives of other people makes a big difference. And we know that part of that journey requires being able to see the signs ahead, right? And seeing signs and being able to pick up on things is a unique gifting. And sometimes it's a skill, sometimes it's a gift that some people have even in extraordinarily productive levels. And you know, there are certain characters that we know from literature and movies and others that have that ability, like Sherlock Holmes, for example, right? Sherlock Holmes was a favorite character because he had that uncanny skill to be able to pick up on those subtle signs, those patterns. He could hear footsteps. He could see different patterns of the way decisions were made or how things were organized, and then he could draw conclusions from that. And you know, it's as educators, of course, that's a useful skill because sometimes we have to be detectives. Sometimes though that we're more likely to be looking for the signs ahead. Schools are sometimes very unpredictable, and if we can stay a little bit ahead of that, it's always a benefit. And so, you know, as we look at that, you know, a great quote was from Robert Baden-Powell that says, "The most successful detectives, they owe their success to noticing small signs. Scouts are natural detectives, and they never let the smallest detail escape them." I think that's also true for educators, that the natural educators, they never let the small details escape them. They take care of the small things, right? We have all kinds of signs in life that we have to encounter and sometimes they give us, you know, kind of a heads up, right? And I lived on a street one time that had a big yellow sign that said, "Caution, dip ahead." Right, a dip in the road, and that was a sign that warned drivers to, hey, slow down, because if you don't, there's going to be problems. And the interesting thing was that particular dip, it wasn't subtle. Nor was it intentional. It was actually the result of a structural failure and a damaged drain pipe that was buried well below and long ago. It was huge. This dip was huge. It was not a subtle thing. It was a big one, and it didn't play favorites. It would impact everybody, and you might be sitting or in the house at night, and all of a sudden you hear this bang, and you say, "Oh, dip got another one." You know, the locals called one of the deep grooves in that dip Sophie's Revenge. And the reason was because that was the name of the large boat that was being towed when the driver of this trailer failed to heed the dip and paid a big toll. They spent a long time cleaning up that mess because he failed to heed the dip. Right? Some dips in the road have a warning sign, and others they abruptly appear with a bang. We don't know they're coming. Sometimes that dip may be a pothole or something else, but they do force us to pause. They get our attention because it sometimes it can cause a real sudden jolt or other impact that kind of wakes us up and causes us to make a different decision. You know how advice is, right? John Steinbeck said, you know how advice is. You only want it if it agrees with what you wanted to do anyway. Right? Sometimes those warnings that say, "Hey, caution," sometimes we kind of blow right through them because we'll take our chances. Well, we all have to navigate dips, and they may be processes, for example, things that cause us to pause. They're intentionally designed to, hey, wait a second, right? Take your time. Don't rush into this, right? There's an intentional dip designed in that moment. Sometimes the dips are conflicts. They're things that cause us to stop the pace we're on, and now have to step into this moment to resolve conflicts of interest or conflicts of behavior or conflicts of performance, right? We have to deal with conflicts, especially in school life. We've talked about that a few different times here on the podcast. It's just part of the existence of educators as we navigate all the challenges that come with this work, right? Sometimes those dips are bureaucracy. Right? Bureaucracy that's designed to kind of pace ourselves a little bit, slow it down because it requires a lot of other folks involved in the decision-making process. And so sometimes that can be helpful and sometimes it can be a real drag, right? But we have to navigate the dips of bureaucracy, and sometimes dips are actually people. They're people who they're just dips. They just kind of, they get in the way, and sometimes it just feels like they don't get it, right? But we have to navigate the dips, right? They force us to hit the brakes, to slow down, and to determine how to minimize any damage. Skills of observation and attention, right? To that attention to detail, they're very helpful to anticipate the risks that are ahead. And of course, there's a habit that is helpful for educators is maybe take the time to do a keen review of the calendar, to think it through, to anticipate, to remember the key relationships that are involved. That's especially true when it comes to communication and sustaining trust. Another conversation, but we have to make sure that we take that time to review the calendar, review those key relationships, as well as our energy level, right? Because that inevitably has an impact on our performance and our decisions. Right? All of that those are useful habits. They help us navigate the dips, as well as keeping boundaries, right? Those boundaries that enable us to have the time, right, to think deeply, to sustain our flow, and to allow that time for rest that our minds and our bodies need. Sometimes those dips are an important part of the journey, and we have to use them wisely. So we also can seek feedback, right? Seeking feedback from trusted mentors or friends, that's a great way to protect ourselves from those blind spots. Those things that we can't see everything. We can't know all of it, even though, it's easy to assume that we do. But we're going to miss some things. And so it's very wise for us as educators to seek out those people around us who they do see some of those areas, and we can listen to them. A great question to ask is what are we not talking about that we should be talking about? Where are my blind spots? Hey, let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. Give careful thought to the paths for your feet, and be steadfast in all your ways. That's great wisdom from Proverbs chapter 4, 25 and 26. Right? Set your eyes and look straight ahead. That's an important part of our leadership, of our growth. Know where you're going, right? Know where you're going, and don't get distracted. That's the advice here. And because you're going to hit some dips, you're going to be paying attention to what's happening, and then bam, right? Dips can be constructive or destructive depending on our response to the situation. Right? We know that preparation and agility are preferred over slamming on the brakes in chaotic panic. Right? We're better off to slow down and to be able to handle the dip versus hitting it head on and dealing with the damage as a consequence. Contingency planning is just a smart move where we invest the time to envision possible scenarios ahead and then ponder ways to slow down, maybe even adjust our tactics and our plans to stay on track. And this is a strength for some. There are some people that if you take Strength Finder or have other assessments, there are some people who they actually have that as a natural strength of theirs that they've gained over time. And it makes sense to pay attention to them, to listen to them, and because they can help us think it through. If the best planners, the people who are the most effective leaders, they do this. They do this contingency planning to help them understand what's coming, and then they think about the ways to slow down and stay on track. This is a valuable strength. So humbly listen to their perspective while staying courageously fixed on the goal. It doesn't mean we give up. It doesn't mean we stop. It means that we're willing to make adjustments while still staying steadfast in our path. Hey, navigate the dips with wisdom and grace, my friend, remaining steadfast in your purpose and thoughtful in your path, because that's how you get the best results. That's how you bring people with you, because we know that this journey to excellence, it can't be walked alone. We have to bring people with us, and they have to be able to trust us. They have to know that as we're going, there's times to hit the accelerator, and then there's times to respect the dip, to know that there's things that we have to sometimes slow our pace. And maybe it's a chance to even to recover and to regroup, but we have to make sure that we can see the warning signs. Sometimes we're seeing the warning signs in others, right? In colleagues or in students, or sometimes we're seeing the warning signs for others. Right? Sometimes we see that in the path that they're going, and sometimes we see it for them. We can look ahead and say, hey, the path that you're on, I don't know, it's got some pretty big risks to it. It's got some big dips. It maybe even has a way beyond a dip. It has a cliff, and are you sure? Right? And when we have trust with people, when they trust us, when they trust our advice, when we have relationships with them, they're willing to listen, right? They're willing to heed our advice, and they're able to that they know that we stay sensitive, to those indicators. And that's an important way that we lead and we teach and we coach and we're a part of the lives of so many other people. Hey, as you're on your journey this week, a coaching question to consider for your growth and habit development. Did I do my best to navigate the dips today? Did I do my best to navigate the dips today? Love them and lead them, my friend. This is Scott.
Thank you for joining us for the Educators Among Us podcast and for your courageous commitment to this noble calling. We get you and the challenges of this work. To stay connected with this community, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and weekly encouragement at educatorsamongus.com.